Welcome, everybody, to the Reach Out podcast. This is your host, Juan Pablo Borges, and I want to thank you all for tuning in once again. This is episode number 12 of the Reach Out podcast, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to thank you all as well for taking the time to work your professional development journey. This is a very, very cool episode. I'm going to get right into it by saying that being a leader is something that, in my opinion, we should all strive for. Our life experiences and our knowledge, if it's transmitted in an effective way, can be extremely useful to those around us. And that's why today I wanted to introduce a great example for this topic, a great advocate for this topic, a true leader, Matt Marthinson. Welcome, man. How's it going today?
Hey, Juan Pablo, thanks for having me on. It's going great. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Um, Before we begin, we get into the topic. Why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up, your college years, your story?
Yeah, sure. I'll do the short version instead of the actual long version. I grew up in Virginia Beach. After high school, I went into the military, went into the Marine Corps, and then after the Marine Corps, I went to college. I didn't finish college. Didn't have enough credits, and so I went out and started working, got married, had a family, and then had several jobs. My wife told me, you need to get your college degree finished. So at 32 years of age, I finished my college degree, and my career has been a series of steps with different companies. My journey has been varied, learning different things along the way that has prepared me for my current role. I've done a little bit of everything from working on loading docks to melting aluminum in furnaces, to becoming a planner, a buyer, a sourcing leader, a director, VP, and up to my current role of COO at OTC Industrial Technologies. Varied role, varied experience, and moved my family around a lot. But you don't have to choose that, but that's what we chose. Glad to be here today. I'm sure you're going to ask me a lot of hard questions. I didn't study a lot for this, so be easy on me.
I'll try not to be too easy on you, Matt. And we were talking a little bit off camera for those of you that don't know. And Matt, you were telling me how you've been all around South America. You have been around that culture that I grew up in. And I want to ask you if you had the opportunity to just go to one country of South America and spend 6 months or a full year, what would that country be and why?
Well, it would have to be a Spanish-speaking country because my Portuguese is terrible. So that narrows it down. But Brazil is a very large country. But I would probably pick uh, either Colombia or go back to Bolivia. Just the culture there, the people are friendly, the family is terrific, the family vibes that you get, and you really, if you're part of the family, you're part of the family. You eat dinner a lot together, and a lot of Americans don't do that anymore. They're scattered or they're busy doing things. They don't get together and sit down and have those meals, and it's the culture is very close knit and very family oriented, which is
Yeah,
a great thing.
yeah. I think those are some of my favorite aspects about the culture from where I grew up on. And by the way, if you're ever in Colombia, just shoot me a text, shoot me a call. We'll treat you right, I promise.
But you're in Houston, Juan Pablo. You can't.
I got friends, I got my family there. I'll let you know. I'll let them know that you're on your way, I
All
promise.
right. I may take
And
you up on that sooner rather than later.
absolutely, for sure. And Matt, getting into topic, the traits of a true leader. That's what we're talking about today. And I want to ask you, you mentioned part of your life you were in the Marine Corps and then you entered the supply chain industry. So, what are some of the traits that you developed being in the military that you still employ to this day in your chief operating officer position at OTC?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things about being a great leader is taking care of the people that work for you. And what I mean by that is uh, not looking out for yourself as much as you're looking out for the folks that work with you and are in your charge. And the reason why I say that is really critical. If you take care of your team, then they'll take care of you. I don't ask my team typically to work overtime or extra hours. They do it because they're dedicated professionals and they know I need the data. Now, I'm not asking them to do it. They do it because they know that I'm going to take care of them. So I think the most critical thing is taking care of the folks that work for you and having their best interest at heart, talking to them individually and treating them as equals. Now, they don't always get to know all the data that I know or the information that I know, but it's important to let them develop and grow and sometimes even make mistakes. So I would say that's the key point is taking care of the folks that are in your group.
That's very, very important to highlight. And towards the end of your answer, you mentioned the mistakes and that aspect of every job that we have. And in past episodes, we were talking about those mistakes that young folks, students that are just joining a company during their internship position or first position after after college, and they get this feeling of you know kind of humiliation, like internally, or they just feel really scared of making mistakes. So, what advice would you give those people that are just starting out of their career?
Don't make the same mistake twice. Uh,
Mhm.
so it's okay to make mistakes. And if you're not sure, ask questions. It's okay to ask questions, especially being new into a job role. It doesn't mean you have to be young, but you could be new in this job. You could be 40 years old and be new in the role and not be sure about something. It's okay to ask questions. Maybe the leader didn't define what the expectations were clearly. And so it's okay to ask questions, but making mistakes is part of maturing. I can't tell you how many mistakes I've made over the years. I mean, if you want to know how many mistakes I've made, you can just ask my wife. She'll tell you all the mistakes I've made. But seriously though, um, it's okay to make mistakes, and what you do is you learn from those mistakes. And so the next time you're faced with that same situation, you probably won't make the same mistake again because you learn from your first experience. So it's called growing and developing. And there's not a person that hasn't made a mistake or, erred. And so what's critical though is that if you make a mistake, that you own up to it and you bring it forward as quickly as possible so that it doesn't grow any larger than it is. And of course, in the operation sides that I am in, we want to make sure that people are safe. So you can't make a mistake where it jeopardizes a person's life. So that's where we have checks and balances to make sure that we're not making mistakes so that someone doesn't get hurt or it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. But mistakes are common, and it's very common for young people who are entering the job market for the first time to be unsure. And a good leader or a leadership team that's everybody like in my group. Hopefully, we're teaching the individuals what to do and what not to do, and creating some standard work so that they have good written instructions or know what to do. We're just not going, hey, go figure out how that stovetop, which one's hot. And once you burn your hand, you won't do that again. So I think the critical thing is allowing some mistakes, but then make it a teaching moment and don't berate anyone because they made a mistake. They'll be less likely to try new things if they're going to get punished for the mistakes. We typically want people to try different things because we want them to figure out how to do it. And there's more than one way to do many different jobs. And so I think the experience that one learns, you may do it differently than I do, and you may be better at it than I am. But we may never have found out how to do it unless you tried something. It's very hard coming out of school and doing the same thing over and over and over. It's almost a mindless job. And so that gets boring and you're not engaging the employee. So back to the matter at hand, mistakes are okay. Just try not to make them over again.
You heard Matt here first. Just don't make him again. Don't make the same mistake twice. But understand that is as part of maturing, as Matt just mentioned. And moving on, Matt, you've held leadership positions in the supply chain industry for a long time. And so through all those roles at all of the companies that you've been in, what has been some of the most important learnings of developing your character as a leader?
That's an interesting question. So part of it is understanding where your workers are coming from. As a leader of the different positions I've held almost every position in the supply chain, from a loading dock to a buyer to a planner to a sourcing leader, etc. And so I understand the challenges that many folks are faced with. But I think the greatest learning experience I've ever had, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is to treat other people fairly. I know how I don't want to be treated. And so I think it's not only what you do, but it's what you don't do. So if someone makes a mistake, you don't criticize them in front of all their peers. I mean, that's embarrassing. Or if you don't agree with something I'm saying, don't criticize your boss in front of all his subordinates. You know, it's okay to pick up the phone afterwards and go, hey, Matt, I think you're really wrong. You missed the point. I don't think you understand what I was trying to say, and I didn't want to say it in front of the group. And there's times when I've been wrong still. And the next meeting we have, I'll say, well, I talked to Juan Pablo after the call and I was wrong. So admit that you were wrong, because we all make mistakes, but treat people fairly. Is I can't stress that enough, is people will be loyal to you if they think you have their best interest at heart. And so if I'm developing you and taking care of you and helping you get promoted to the next position, you're probably going to be happier than if I just let you do whatever you want to do and you don't feel like you're part of the team. So it's inclusion, it's working together on a team and figuring out what is it that you want to do. So Juan Pablo, I'm going to flip the script on you. You're the interviewer and I'm the interviewee, but I'm going to interview you really quickly. So you're a senior at University of Houston, majoring in supply chain. So you want to do something in the supply chain, but would you rather do something in a field you'd rather be comfortable with a crummy boss, or would you rather do something that you're really not too sure about and have a great boss?
Oh, definitely. I would rather the second option, do something that I'm not really uh, very knowledgeable about or comfortable with at the time. But if I have a great boss, someone that I trust, someone that I feel comfortable with whenever talking to him about a problem or something that I don't really uh, understand, that's invaluable, man. And honestly, um, I think I've been very blessed. In the past positions, I've had great bosses. I want to just give a quick shout out on Min Vo. He was my old boss at Verus Financial, and he's the CEO of the company. He created his own company, and to be honest, there was moments where he did not need it to be that nice to me, but he was still very nice. He was always there when I needed him, and at moments I felt like I was talking to a friend rather than just like, well, I'm talking to my superior. I need to be careful to what I'm saying, which I was always careful. but he made me feel that comfortability, and up until this moment in my internship, my supervisor Kanai Gupta, he's the best. He knows how to listen, he knows how to delegate, he knows how to step in and when to step in. And to me, that those are some traits that are invaluable in a boss, that they make seem like they make any problem within the procedure or any task that may seem overwhelming, they make it a lot easier on me. And to me, that's what a great boss does. And um, I appreciate that question, honestly, because sometimes I get lost in the day to day. And as I mentioned before, part of the reason why I did this program, why I do this podcast, is to use it kind of selfishly as a gratitude channel. You know, uh, I tend to remember these names. I tend to remember these people whenever I'm talking to the guests, and I think always that is a great thing. Being grateful to those people that helped you, and I'm sure that both Minik and I, they don't really know how much of a positive impact they had on me just because of the fact that they had a good boss, that they were a good boss.
No, that's great. Thanks for answering that question. Now I'm gonna ask myself a question: Is how do you know if you're a good boss? How do you know if you're treating your folks fairly? And I'm going to answer it this way: and developing your team. I know I'm successful when folks actually leave my organization and they go run their own organization. And
Mm.
so I know that had a plan or a part in the development of individuals when they go run their own supply chains. And so through the years, I've had a lot of folks that have followed me from company to company because I go fix companies. But I don't mind if people go out and go work for someone else and then become VPs or leaders of their own supply chains. I think that's great. And part of what's really interesting is uh, it's been your entire career, but LinkedIn was started about 2003. And before that, the supply chain wasn't a very big organization. Now we have ways to connect with each other. We didn't have podcasts back then. We basically had mail. So we didn't have email back in the day. So I know it sounds very archaic, but what's cool now is you can stay in touch with these folks and you can develop folks, and it's amazing how technology has evolved, but strengthened not only the supply chain, but I think one of the important things as you leave school is to network. Remember your classmates, because it may be 5 years down the road or more, and you may go work with a guy or a gal that you used to go to school with, and you already know them. So it makes it more comfortable. And really, supply chain wasn't a major 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So it's really taken off, and it's fun to see the growth in this area. Now, before the show, and I know I'm just rattling, but I have 5 kids, and all of them are in supply chain. My youngest is a senior in the supply chain field, and so when she graduates next year, hopefully she lands with someone that used to work for me that I treated fairly, and that person can treat her just as fairly as I treated them. But anyway, I didn't mean to monopolize the show. Keep going, Juan. This is great.
Absolutely not. Don't ever apologize for that, because that's what I'm looking for. And I do wish your daughter all the luck in the world. We're kind of in the same time position right now, and I'm sure that I can relate to some of those fears that she may have as being a student, and especially trying to navigate into the supply chain industry. It's a very interesting process, so make sure to tell her that I wish her all the luck. And Matt, it was funny that you mentioned, uh, the importance of networking, and especially back then when either there was no LinkedIn or LinkedIn was fairly new. And I want to mention that while, you know, researching about you and about the podcast episode in particular, uh, I encountered some people that, while writing about their experience while working with you, a lot of your old peers highlighted your can do energy and your can do attitude, and how that attitude was one of the main reasons for your success. So I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit more on what that means to you. What is the can do attitude?
Yeah, so we call it GSD, and the polite way is getting stuff done. The incorrect way is another S word, right? And so what I look for is people that get stuff done. And what's really important is there's a lot of adversity. You know, people have families, people have other responsibilities that they, work's just part of one of the many responsibilities they have. But really being able to get stuff done in a timely and concise manner really makes you very valuable. Really, I mean, they ask for college degrees, and that just proves that you have the capability to do a certain amount of work. But it's really the folks that put in the extra effort, put in the the work, and get things done is really what's critical to me, because I'm under timelines. I try not to be demanding, but I think the can-do attitude comes from never quit, never give up, uh, get things done, and so in life, you've got to understand what is it that your boss wants. And so this project, uh, I think we were talking about inventory earlier. So you're looking at excess inventory as an intern. And so how do you prevent that from happening? Well, that frees up cash. Well, that cash can be used in other places. That's part of working capital. We studied that in school, right?
Right.
So there's three ways to generate cash. There's pull in your accounts receivable, push out your accounts payable, and reduce your inventory. And so a lot of people forget that, and they're all working on things that deliver profit. And so what I definitely like to work on is the working capital. So that project that you're working on is very valuable if you're a large, well, if no matter what size company, because that's money that's tied up that you could be investing in other things, new buildings, new equipment, different buying other companies. And so in some cases for large companies, it's millions and millions of dollars. So I think being able to accomplish and getting things done is what makes you reliable, and you get more responsibility. And then if you treat your folks fairly, you bring them along, and as you get promoted, then you promote them as well. And so I look forward to the day where I'm retired. I don't want to retire because I love my job, but I look forward to the day that I retire and I see my kids in roles similar to what I have, or, and just enjoy the passion that I have for supply chain. It's fun. There's so many different things you can do. You can travel. There's the supply side, there's the demand side, there's the transportation side. There's just so many things today. And during COVID of the last, for the past 3 years, not of the last year, but of the 2 years previous to that, people never heard the word supply chain so many times. Well, we can't get this, we can't get that. And so I think it's been uh, this area that we're in for our job functions is so critical to today, because materials come from everywhere. They come from different time zones, by different modes of transportation, made in different countries with people that speak different languages. And so and as we cut back on inventory, it's the need to have things there on time is just as important as ever. So anyway, I'll stop there. I know you've got a ton more questions, and we're probably limited on time.
I wanted to mention that how you explain being in the supply chain industry and course, you have an invaluable experience because, as you mentioned in the beginning of the episode, you have been through every single process of the supply chain across your career. And I think someone that has done that has the perfect understanding of what are the priorities, what are the objectives of each department, that they work conjunctively with each other every day. But sometimes that communication is lost because some party doesn't understand what the other party really needs. And I will say that working in the internship that I'm right now, it has really opened my eyes and made me see what you mentioned, like those huge millions and millions and millions of dollars operations, problems that on the textbook they seem kind of interesting to read about, but in the real world it's money that's coming out of the big companies' pockets. And it's just like money in the air that nobody knows how to bring it back. And that was just a big eye opener for me. But what was more important and what is still more important to me right now is to understand how communication is one of the most important core values that everyone needs to prioritize, because people, in my opinion, people just say that term like you have to have a good communication very lightly. But if I sit down and I go to the root of the problems of whatever I'm doing in my company, like in the company that I work for, communication is probably the main cause, like poor communication, and that has cost the company a lot of money. So I think always keeping that in mind is very important. But I did want to mention also, just going back to what we were talking about, that uh, I also thought that it was really cool that you have been probably one of two guests where I've had so many testimonies to read from your old coworkers, and it's clear that the impact that you had on them was nothing but positive. And in my opinion, that's always one of the priorities in everything that we do as people. So, what would you say are the most essential traits to generate a positive impact in people around you, Matt?
It goes back to taking care of them again. I know I kind of said that, but if you really are interested in advancing, um, I can tell you, I know how I don't want to be treated, and I think many people are the same way. So uh, I would say to create a positive environment, we do a lot of work with teams. And so, and a lot of my team members are remote, so we use Teams or Zoom. But when I say teams, I'm saying teamwork, not just Teams, the software. But we're working on teams to solve a problem or to fix something that was broken. And many times we don't know what the answer is. And so maybe one individual cannot figure it out. But as a team, typically we do much better and are able to go faster. What is critical is that we don't get so marred in the minutia at the low level stuff. We want to be able to move really quickly. So you need to prioritize what are the important things. So we work on this thing called 80/20. And so 20% of the items are 80% of the value. So if you are looking at inventory and you've got a Pareto of all of your inventory, the top items represent the high dollars. Those are the ones that you'll want to work on the most because they will free up the most cash. And so it doesn't mean that you don't work on the tail, but that should be a secondary effort because you want to work on what moves the needle the quickest. So one of my jobs at OTC Industrial Technologies is I own pricing and profitability. And so my teammates set the pricing based upon what moves the needle. And we work on inventory the same way, 80/20. We work on prioritizing what is going to make the biggest change with the least amount of effort the quickest. And so 80/20, I want you guys to look it up. And I think that helps determine what you can accomplish by focusing on the key items first.
That's very true. And I was lucky enough to read more about that concept before my internship started. And as you say, it's very true. I wish I could speak on like the actual details on how that reflects on what I'm doing. But there was a moment this past week where me and my supervisor really, um, there was like a big eye opener on the amount of inventory that we were treating with. You know, there was a lot. And when we just went down and dialed down all to the most expensive ones, we realized that there was a clearly 80/20 situation going on. And I think not only with work, but with school and especially the podcast, I've had to operate under that principle a lot of times. And I still continue to do that because there's a lot of activities, a lot of things that I can do to keep this podcast going, but a lot of them are not going to bring me the results that some others are going to will. So as you said, and message to all the listeners, always keep that principle in mind. If you don't know what it is, then go look it up because it's very important to understand that. And Matt, moving on from that, with all this new wave of talent, recent college graduates, all these young folks coming into the industry, it also comes with a new wave of, conflicts, a new wave of problems, new technologies. So you being in, such a high position, what do you think are some of the key traits that as a leader and someone in management looks for in a new candidate?
Well, I look for someone that GSD, right? Get
Mhm.
stuff done. And so what I think is good about me having kids that are on the younger side, right? That are your age and maybe a little bit older, is I'm an early adopter of technology. So I think today's recent graduates and folks that are getting ready to graduate or will graduate, the technology available today is so different and it's so powerful. So, I mean, probably in the last 6 months, you've heard more about Chat GPT
Mhm.
and AI, and we have just scratched the surface of using technology like that. But back in the day, this is probably, I don't know, 35 years ago. Barcoding was a new technology that was not, maybe it wasn't new, but it wasn't easily adoptable in a lot of warehouses. And so I remember the first time I put barcoding in a warehouse, and it was night and day different than the technology that we had the 3 months previous to me putting that in. And so I think what is important today with students is learn about new technologies, bring that technology, solve the problem with technology. So one of the things we're doing right now is we're using RPAs, robotic process automation. So we're automating. One of the first jobs we automated was a report that we had to generate monthly for rebates. The report took approximately 8.5 hours. A bot does it in 5 minutes now and does it every single time. And they use the CPU after hours. So it's less of a strain on our system and it's automated. So there's other things that we are putting in around RPAs as well. So technology is going to be critical. So you don't have to be a supply chain expert to work in the supply chain, especially if you're a technology expert, because you can apply some of what you know technology wise towards things in the supply chain and come up with solutions that have been problems, and by automating them you can fix them really quickly and consistently. So that's what I'm looking for, is someone that is brings technology, is able to try new things, uh, and look at it from a different perspective.
That's very well said. And it's very interesting to see how the very new stuff changes from generation to generation. We give a lot of the already existing technologies just we take them for granted, but we don't really see what was the process of emerging those technologies and implementing those technologies in the processes that we're already seeing today. So definitely keep what Matt just said in mind. And Matt, just moving on to the last stage of this episode, I want to ask you one of my favorite questions, which is I call it the time machine game. So let's pretend you have a time machine and you were able to go back and talk to your 20-year-old. So you have in front of you, you have 20-year-old Matt. What would you say to him?
Um, Here are the winning lottery numbers for this date in the future. That's what I tell him. Uh, no, actually, I didn't come up the conventional way because I went in the Marine Corps. And like I said, I was older when I graduated from college. And so I will tell anyone, be persistent. Don't ever give up. And so I think that's the can do attitude that I have. I don't give up. I'm consistent. I keep driving, driving, driving. And I love it when someone tells me no, because that makes me want to do it even more so. And so I wouldn't probably change the way I grew up, um, except maybe if I could go back and talk to myself when I'm 20, I'd say, keep your foot off that gas pedal a little bit more around those red lights. Uh, but
Okay.
but as far as how I grew up, I think it's made me who I am. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I work for everything I got, and I just keep trying and trying and trying. So I think that's kind of my attitude, is don't let anyone tell you no, get stuff done, and just keep reaching, and don't quit.
That's a very good advice. And I hope everyone that's listening to Matt right now really got a hold of that. And after you finish listening to this episode, really keep that in mind because, um, you know, experience talks and the years talk. And I think that's very, very valuable. Matt, the last question of this episode, I want to ask you what makes you happy?
Well, family makes me happy, and that's probably the number one thing, is family. But I will tell you, I love my job. I love the folks I work with. Real team environment. So it's not like I go to work every day, because it's not like it's difficult. I'm not saying it's not hard, but I have a lot of smart people that I work with that solve a lot of the problems I have. While I tell you about my experience, if we had hours and hours, I could tell you about all of their experience, because they're the ones that make me look good, because they really know what they're doing. They bust their backsides. They get things done. The GSD, remember? They get stuff
Yeah,
done and they just make it happen. And sometimes while I'm sleeping, they're working. And they have a never quit attitude. And so I would say that's what makes me happy, is family, and my coworkers winning in this type of environment. So I'm nothing without them. Yeah, I'm the guy that's the leader, but they're the ones that get the stuff done. So kudos to my team. I hope you're listening.
I think it's very, very positive, and personally, I love how you praise your team. I think that's one of the very clear traits of your leadership and within your role at OTC. And I respect you a lot, Matt. As you mentioned, you're a father of five. Hats off to you, and hats off to all the fathers. And I do want to give a quick little shout out to Chris Brown. She was the one that gave me your contact and allowed in the beginning to us having this conversation, you know?
So let's, if you've got one quick second. So
Of
we
course.
talked about networking really quickly. So Chris is a headhunter. You know, he finds people in the supply chain. He's great. It's important to align with folks that will help you in your career. These are the folks that are in the supply chain recruitment area. And so I think it's really important. Every job I've had came through LinkedIn or typically through a recruiter where someone found me through a recruiter found me through LinkedIn. So make sure you have all those keywords out there on LinkedIn. Maybe you'll do a podcast on LinkedIn. So how to be found and stuff. So with someone like Chris Brown, who's a super guy. But anyway, thanks, Juan Pablo. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully your listeners did too, and we didn't bore them too much.
Well, I think whenever it comes to these episodes with people in the supply chain industry, I know that a bunch of my listeners are not focused in supply chain as a major, but definitely there's a lot of great takeaways from people like you, Matt. So thank you for being here. I wish everyone a great rest of your evening. As always, check us out on Instagram, check us out on TikTok, check me out on LinkedIn. Matt, is there any way the listeners can find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so Matt Marthinson. I'm the only one out there that's spelled like this, so you'll find me. I do like to connect, and many of you guys will be looking for internships next year. Don't forget to look me up. Maybe I can help you or put you somewhere. So remember, we talked about networking. So
Mhm.
just mention that you were on Juan Pablo's podcast, and let's see if we can help you out.
That'd be awesome. So everyone that's listening, keep an eye out for that. And as I always say, don't be afraid to reach out. It's not about the things that you can get from the people, but it's about building a genuine connection, and genuine relationship. So have a good one, everybody. Bye bye.